Way of Kings, the way of kings. Part 2, The Illuminating Storm. Dalinar, Kaladin, Adolin. So here we are now in the second part of the book, and from now on I'm going to be much more brief, firstly because we'll never get through this otherwise, but secondly because I'm not here to give away spoilers, and look, we've introduced most of the characters now, but then again, no we don't, because with this moment here, this opening of second part of book, we introduce a couple more important characters, specifically the ones that I just said just then, apart from Kaladin, who we already know. Dalinar! Dalinar! I've been waiting to get to Dalinar. Dalinar, played by actor Liam Cunningham, in my head, you know, it's just a book, but that's who he's played by. I mean, we must have been at that bit of Game of Thrones when this happened, you know, but it's like him crossed with Blackwall from Dragon Age Inquisition. That's basically who this is. And in fact, I'm finding out by reading this that Blackwall from Dragon Age Inquisition may well be copied from Blackthorn from this book, which is what Dalinar's other name is. And I've also been reading the Witcher books this year, so it's been a whole year of finding out what everything from Dragon Age is from. Ooh! Dalinar is the great warrior of the past. Not the very distant past, the fairly recent past, but not very, very recent, because very, very recently he's going a bit wappy. Nobody really talks about it openly, except people who want to make fun of him, but it's generally known that Dalinar is going a bit strange during high storms recently. He'll go all glassy-eyed and he'll fall down and he'll wabble about, and then he'll come up talking about the Radiance, and everyone goes, oh dear, he's been having visions, what's going on with him? And we meet his sons, Renarin and Adolin. Or it could be Adolin, but then his name would be Adolin Colin, and that's a little bit sort of Alfonso Bonzo. And they are cousins, and therefore Dalinar is uncle to the king, King Elhokar, who seems to be young and cocky and a bit of a silly billy, really. He's very paranoid about people attacking him, but only in his home. He's worried about being backstabbed in some way, but he's not at all concerned about, you know, being bested in combat face to face like a man. He's quite up for that, in fact. And then there's Sadeas, a sort of horrible, sneery uncle who looks like Dr. Robotnik and is always keen to just subtly make fun of Dalinar in front of the king, which his sons do not like. Anyway, short version of this chapter is that Elhokar initiates a race with Dalinar to get to the top of the spike from the intro to Sonic CD, and up they race, and Dalinar's doing really well because he's an all-round super-duper knight, but then suddenly the voice hits him in his mind, unite them! And he goes all funny, which allows Elhokar, the king, to just slip in front and win the race, and they're both happy with that. But as Elhokar is standing on the top of the rock formation, he looks down and sort of surveys the landscape around there, and he gets the funniest feeling that he's seen this all before somewhere. That's it, he thought. I did stand atop a formation like this. It happened during the intro to Sonic CD. No, it was in the first of his strange visions that he has during high storms, and a voice said to him, you must unite them, you must prepare, build of your people a fortress of strength and peace, a wall to resist the winds. Cease squabbling and unite, the Everstorm comes. So Dalinar is one of the most important characters in this entire book, and so it's really interesting that he only actually shows up now, this far in. He's also, of all the characters in this book, the first one that Brandon Sanderson developed. The existence of this character in Brandon's mind is why this book exists. And in fact, to listen to Brandon talk, I get the sense that this actually might be one of the first characters he ever came up with ever at all. He had a lot of trouble writing and developing this character, and it seems to me that that's because his initial idea for him was that he was just basically a perfect knight, just a flawless, amazing guy. And Brandon knows what to do about a character whose problem is that they're flawless. Break them! So here we have Dalinar several years after he was flawless, in which his entire life has gone all weird and doolally, and he is starting to go weird and doolally with it. He's never quite been the same since his brother was murdered by Seth way back in the prologue or prelude or whatever it was at the time. Now he's having these fits and visions, and he's really having a hard time of it. So he's a very important character in this story, the sort of person who would never accidentally kick his camera tripod slightly out of alignment. So it's weird that he is introduced to us the way that he is. I don't mean weird like something wrong with it, it's just interesting. He is introduced to us through the POV of his son Adolin. By showing him to us through his son's eyes before through his own is an interesting choice. It kind of, what it does is it makes us think of Dalinar as not from the main generation of this story. By giving us Adolin's viewpoint first and seeing Dalinar as his dad, we kind of think of him as like, you know, that age compared to us, the Reeds. Do you know what I mean? It kind of puts us in the same place as Adolin to look up to Dalinar as an older father figure. When I first read the book, I'd already gathered the impressions that Dalinar was a main character, so I was really interested then to see how Brandon changes this and makes Dalinar feel like a main character rather than like a dad of a main character, and sure enough, he absolutely does manage this. And in this chapter we really get an extra good look at Shardplate through the eyes of people who wear Shardplate. All the people I mentioned at the top of this video all wear Shardplate. They've all had it painted different colours. Adolin is blue, Renarin, don't know, what's he, green? I've just made that up, I don't know what he is, but Sadeas is red because he's bad. But Dalinar, he hasn't painted his at all. His is just grey because he isn't fancy. Much is made of Adolin being slightly uncomfortable in his Shardplate. He finds it hot and sweaty in the sun. He has to be really super careful when he picks up a cup or something. I can't remember what it was, but he has to make sure he doesn't smash anything that he grabs. So you get the impression that he hasn't, like, in other words, it's a filling his father's shoes sort of metaphor. His dad is not just like good in his armor is like part of him. He doesn't even need it to be fancy for him to be amazing in it. Dalinar belongs in it so much that he doesn't even make a fuss. He doesn't paint it up, he doesn't make it fancy, whereas Adolin doesn't quite feel like he fits in it yet at all. And then meanwhile there's Sadeas. Oh, he's all like, I'm in my Shardplate. He thinks he's all great, and he does look good. The Shardplate looks good, but then he got his big fat Dr. Robotnik face, and it comes off as a bit incongruous. So it seems like an interloper in the armour, as well as in the armour that is the family unit, I don't know. And of course the king, I'm not even looking it up, I bet he's gold. I bet he's all fancy and gold, and I bet the word resplendent is used. Yep, there it is, yep, the king was resplendent in his golden Shardplate. See, I know that I've been around the block. You can't have magic armor without being resplendent in it anyway. I've read Space Marines. Is anything resplendent other than guys in magic armor? I don't think I've ever seen the word resplendent for anything else. Oh, there's one character I forgot to mention. Gallant, the giant horse. Dalinar's got this giant horse. It's not called a horse, it's called a Rhyshadium. But it's a horse, it's just a big horse. But the Rhyshadiums are basically just really massive horses, but they're also really intelligent, so you can actually communicate with them and they can decide things and stuff. You know, they're just basically like, you know Maximus from Tangled? Dalinar rides him. And now we hear about the Great Shells, which are these giant shoals. You remember the crab things that people used to ride around on? Imagine gigantic crustacean things with gem hearts in them. Now, I've already told you about how much I'm into marbles and magic jewels inside marbles, which is what you get in this book. Where do the jewels come from? Don't know, half the time, maybe out of the ground like here, but some of them come from inside the Great Shells, for they have gem hearts. They have massive clusters of magical jewels for a heart or something. They're just full of these magic jewels. Hooray! I like this story. It's so silly. It's like, it makes so much sense in the book, but when you really think about what it is, it's a video game. You kill a monster and you get jewels out of it. That's a video game, but he's made it work. He's made video game logic work in a real setting. It's great. And here, by the way, is where we find out that Shardplate is in fact Space Marine power armor. It enhances your muscles, it drives you so you can cover great distances, it makes you stronger, it makes you jump higher and further. But it transfers feeling. If you're wearing a Shardplate gauntlet and you touch the wall, you can feel, the stone, you can feel the stone, as if you were touching it with your fingerprints. Or it says like as if you were wearing very thin leather. There's a bit of lore, L-O-R-E, that's worth mentioning here, because they mention the origin, which is the origin point for the high storms. And it's not just like, oh, this one's origin is in the east or something. No, there seems to be a fixed place that's called the origin, that everyone knows where it is. They are, in other words, coming from somewhere. Will we find out where? Not in this book. There's something about fantasy writing in particular, which doesn't seem to happen quite so much in any other kind of writing, where American fantasy writers sometimes bump up against British English without really meaning to. And of course it doesn't really matter because, a lot of their audience will be American and it'll never be brought up. But when you are a British person and you read an American fantasy novel and you just bump up against one of these moments where what something means in American English is different to what it means in British English, those moments can be kind of jarring. And there's a very, very big one on page 246 of this book. And it goes like this. An enormous arrow slammed into the Chasmfiend's head, cracking chitin. Purple gore spurted free, causing... Purple gore spurted free. Purple gore spurted free, causing the beast to trump in agony. Please, send in your examples of things in fantasy books letting out a trump of triumph or pain or anything you like.